In that, two chapters are there. One is lasers and the second one is fiber optics. Today we'll start the chapter lasers. Take the heading. Is it visible? The PPT slide is visible. Boys.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Unit 5 lasers. Please take the heading. So tell me, what is laser? Full form? Can anyone tell? Laser stands for
A beam of light, sir, which contains particles.
particles. So
Not visible.
tube light is a laser, according to you. It is a beam of light and particles are there,
Yes, sir.
isn't it?
Which
Tube,
travels in only one direction.
tube light is laser or not?
Nanoparticles, sir.
Nanoparticles or lasers? Hmm? Anyone? What are the applications of lasers?
Sir, lasers are used in medical field.
Very good.
Sniper.
Hmm. In terms of intensity and laser, what is the difference between ordinary light and laser light? Okay, could you able to see the figure? The laser is coming from its source.
Yes, sir.
Intensity is it high or low for laser?
Hi, sir.
Yeah, that is the difference. So laser is a special device, a technology, so that you can produce a highly intensified energetic beam. So in this chapter, we are going to discuss the basics of lasers, and because for many applications like you said, the medical treatments, fiber optics, optical communication, and the data transforming from one device to another device, these lasers are very, very important. So in this chapter, we are going to discuss the fundamental aspects of lasers. Okay, so introduction to lasers, then the properties of lasers, which are characteristics of lasers, and the mechanisms involved for the production of laser. They are spontaneous emission, stimulated emission, induced absorption, metastable state. Four definitions are there. So first, before going to the actual application part, you must know the basics of the laser technology. So it is characteristics of laser, the spontaneous stimulated emission, then Einstein coefficients, some more derivation is there, and some important definitions before going to the types of lasers. The principle behind the production of laser, which is lasing action, also we are going to discuss. Then types of lasers, different types based on the fabrication and the operational mode. There are number of lasers out there. Three we are going to discuss in this chapter, and finally the applications of lasers we are going to discuss in this chapter. So only one derivation is there, everything is descriptive here. So all you know, laser is an acronym for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. So laser stands for L for light, A is amplification, S is stimulated, E is emission, R is radiation. So it is light amplification of light by stimulated emission of radiation. So laser is a device to produce a powerful monochromatic beam of light in which the waves are coherent. So it is a device. By using this principle, one can produce a highly monochromatic light which are very coherent and energy is also very high, highly energetic, monochromatic, coherent light beam can be produced by this technique, which is used for many applications. So what actually the mechanisms involved to produce such type of light radiation, we are going to discuss. So once we use this technique, the light beam which emerges as a narrow beam, very sharp, very directional, and it can travel over long distances without much loss of energy. So it is a device to produce a powerful monochromatic beam of light in which the waves are coherent, and the beam which emerges finally is a very sharp narrow beam and which can travel over long distances and without much loss of energy. So this is the advantage in producing this laser. If you want, right, laser stands for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Ordinary light, it's ordinary only. There are many angles, it is not monochromatic, a broad spectrum you can obtain. It is not coherent. So it is visible, but for a special application, you need such a type of light radiation, which can be achieved by the stimulated emission of radiation. How it can be, we are going to discuss in this. Laser stands for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. By this, you can produce a highly energetic monochromatic coherent beam, which is a narrow beam having a very high unidirection, which travels over long distances, and the energy loss is very less for this laser. So, as I said, when compared with any conventional light, that is sunlight or tube light or ordinary light, laser exhibits few outstanding characteristics. So, what is the specialty of this laser once you compare with ordinary light or tube light, sunlight? The first one is high monochromaticity. Monochromaticity means, you know, what is monochromatic?
No, sir.
Monochromaticity means it has only single wavelength. That means the light which is coming from this laser is possessing only single wavelength. That means it is very wavelength and frequency are interrelated. So it's high monochromaticity. This is not a spectrum. It is a combination of three or more wavelengths. It is not like that. So if it is a combination, if you take white light is not monochromatic. White light is, it is polychromatic, and the dispersion of light is there. It is splitting into 7 colors, jar, violet, indigo, blue, you know. So white light is called a polychromatic light, whereas red wavelength, red light or green light, violet, they are called as monochromatic. So here in this laser, this light ray, it is consisting of a single wavelength. Is present in the output laser beam, and the second one high directionality. That means it goes straight almost without any deviation. That is also required. Otherwise, if it deviates again, you should change the direction for the propagation of light. So it has high directionality, and the next one high intensity. Intensity, that means for many applications, the intensity is very high, and finally high coherence. So these are not observed in ordinary light or sunlight, but by certain external mechanism, if you produce laser, you can achieve high monochromatic light beam, which is having high directionality, high intensity, and highly coherent. I'll explain what is actually coherence while explaining each and every one. So high monochromaticity, you see. So if you take an ordinary light, the green shaded one, the device is used, the ordinary light is allowed to pass through the device, and finally the output is, when it is taken on the graph, you can observe a wide bandwidth. It is not narrow bandwidth. The spread of the wavelength of frequency about the wavelength of maximum intensity is the bandwidth. So if you take ordinary light, the green shaded one, it has a broad bandwidth. That means it's a combination of number of colors. So it's not a purely monochromatic. The bandwidth is very high. But if you take laser in the second diagram, you can observe a sharp beam. That means for this, the intensity, it is producing only a wavelength, a single wavelength only. So because of that, it has a sharp bandwidth. You can say it is having single wavelength. That's why laser is highly monochromatic. Ordinary light is not highly monochromatic. It has a combination of colors, and 3 or 4 colors, sometimes 7 colors like that for ordinary light. But in the laser, you have only a single wavelength. That's why a laser is called as highly monochromatic. So this is the first characteristic of laser when you compare with ordinary light. Is it okay? Monochromaticity means it has a single wavelength. Polychromatic means multiple wavelengths. White light is polychromatic, white source. But laser is having single wavelength. That's why it is called as highly monochromatic. Second one, high directionality. As I said, without any deviation, the laser can be propagated. It emits light that is highly directional. That is, the laser light emitted as a relatively narrow beam in a specific direction. So that means ordinary light, if you take any ordinary bulb, it gives radiation in all directions. You can assume a sphere. But for laser, it is almost straight. If you take an example, when the light laser beam is allowed to pass through a medium or in space for 1 meter, the deviation is less than 0.01 mm. That means it goes almost straight. But for ordinary light, this is for every 1 meter, the deviation is 0.5 meters it goes. So ordinary light, it gets deviated from its original direction for each meter, whereas for laser, it almost goes straight. The deviation is around less than 0.01 millimeter. So you can say the direction, that means once it is produced from a source, it goes almost straight. So this is the advantage in taking lasers, high directionality. For ordinary light, it is 0.5 meters per meter, whereas for laser it is less than 0.01 mm per every 1 meter. So you can say laser is having high directionality. Then third one is high intensity. So it is high laser light is having a high intensity when you compare with conventional light. So the number of photons coming out from a laser per second per unit area is intense actually. It is given by n is equal. Only this is for information sake. So it is not there in the syllabus. You should understand the basic concepts. N is the number of photons. N is equal to P by h nu pi r square. So h is Planck's constant, nu is the frequency, r is the radius, p is the momentum, like that. So number of photons per unit area per second are more per laser, so that the intensity will be. You can see the diagram, how lasers are coming with a great intensity from source and traveling without any deviation with the high intensity. You can see. So the first one is monochromatic. Second one is high directionality. Third one is high intensity. These are the properties of laser when you comparing with the ordinary light. And the fourth one, high coherence. So if the two light rays are having same phase difference or zero phase, then they are said to be coherent. So it is expressed in terms of ordering of light field. So laser light is having high degree of ordering than other common sources. Due to its coherency, only it is possible to create high power. If you say incoherent, the phase difference it is lagging. If you take comparing all these waves, the phase differences are different for different wavelengths. So from the source, lasers light is coming for ordinary light. The phase difference you can see it is different for different waves. The phase is different. But once you take highly coherent, you see that they have same phase at each and every point. So the instantaneous state of a particle with respect to time is represented by phase. So all these waves they are covering same distance with respect to time. That's why they are called as coherent. So if two light waves are traveling with the same phase or constant phase difference, then they are called as coherent. Laser light expressed in terms of ordering of light, because they are coherent. The power is very high, which is of the order of 10 to the power of 12 watts in space. So that with laser beam per 1 micrometer diameter. That means if you take a laser source of diameter 1 micro mm and allow the light to pass through that, the laser light is traveling, is coming from out of this, which is coherent and which produces a power of 10 to the power of 12 watts, which is very, very high when you compare with this ordinary light. So these four are the specific properties of laser light. So first one, laser stands for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. By using laser, a highly monochromatic, narrow, coherent light, intensified light can be produced, which can be used for different engineering applications. If you compare an ordinary light and laser light, laser has certain specific properties such as highly monochromatic. Second one, you high directionality. Third one, high coherent. Fourth one, high intensity. So these are the four properties. So laser is highly monochromatic. Once you, for ordinary light, you have a wide bandwidth, but once you take a laser, output laser beam, you will be observing a sharp, narrow wave, which indicates that it is associated with only a single wavelength. You can say a laser is monochromatic in nature. Polychromatic, it is a combination of wavelengths, whereas laser, it is monochromatic, having single wavelength. Second one, high directionality. So it goes almost right from the source. So for 1 meter, the deviation is less than 0.04 mm per laser, whereas for ordinary light, it is 0.5 mm. Much deviation is there for ordinary light, but lasers go right in general. This is another one. Then intensity is also very high. The number of photons emitting per second per unit area is more for lasers, so that it produces high intensity. And finally, if the phase difference, since the laser light wavelets are having same phase or constant phase difference, they produce high power, which is of the order of 10 to the power of 12 watts when the diameter is 1 micrometer. So these are the specific properties of laser. So by this property, for any application, because these are advantages, without any deviation, you can target the source with this laser, and it is having single wavelength, and the intensity is high, and the power is also very, very high for these lasers. So these are the characteristics of lasers when you compare with ordinary light or sunlight. Okay. Is this clear, students? The introduction to lasers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Girls?
Yes, sir.
Now you take the basic mechanisms for producing laser. Take the heading. Basic mechanisms for producing laser. And the first one is induced absorption. First one is induced absorption, and you take that figure. Induced absorption, you take the figure. E1, E2 are energy levels. E1 corresponding to lower energy and E2 corresponding to higher energy. First to take the diagram, I'll explain that. Shall I explain, students?
1 minute, sir.
Okay. So how to produce laser? Before going to that, what are the mechanisms or fundamental processes that occur in atomic level or in molecular level, we should understand. So the first one is induced absorption. So if you take any material, then what happens? The atoms are arranged in different energy levels. Generally, all confined to the nucleus. You can say all are at the ground state or in the stable state. So the process by which an atom or particle can be moving from lower state to higher state is called as excitation. So for excitation, external force is required so that the atom or particle which is there in the ground state, it takes the energy so that its momentum increases. It moves from lower energy state to higher energy state. So the process of moving a particle which is there in the ground state to a higher state by using external energy or external force is called as excited state. Is called as excitation. Generally, this excitation can be done by absorbing energy. It is in the form of photons. That means when the atom is already there in the ground state, a photon is allowed to incident on the atom. Then the particle which is there in the ground state or atom, it takes the energy, absorbs the energy of photon, and it goes to the higher energy state. So this mechanism, this is called as induced absorption. So the process in which a particle or an atom can be transferred from minimum energy state or lower energy state to higher energy state is called as excitation. So in this process, absorption of energy from the external field takes place. So generally, the transfer of an atom or particle from lower energy state to higher energy state can be occurred due to the absorption of photon, and this phenomena, this is called as induced absorption. So if you see in the figure, initially the particle is in the lower energy state represented by E1. Now in this situation, a photon is allowed to incident on the atom. So the atom in the ground state E1 absorbs this photon, and if you see the second diagram, then the particle goes to the excited state. So this phenomena is called as excitation, because in this absorption of photon takes place. This is called as induced absorption. So in as a gist, we can say light can be emitted or absorbed by particles during their transitions from one energy state to another. So generally it happens frequently. A particle from higher energy state to low energy state, when once it transfers, it emits energy. The particle has to move from lower energy to higher energy. It has to absorb energy. So this absorption can take place in the form of absorbing photons, transferring a particle atom from ground state or E1 to higher energy state E2 is called as excitation, and the particle is said to be excited. So in absorption, suitable amount of energy is absorbed by the atoms of the ground state to get excited to the higher energy states. So a photon energy is absorbed by the atom in the ground state, so that it gets energy, it jumps from the lower energy state to higher energy state, and this mechanism, this is called as induced absorption. Is it clear? So in general, the atoms or particles are in the ground state, and generally in atomic mechanisms, excitation, de-excitation takes place. That means transfer of particles or atoms from higher energy to lower energy, to higher energy takes place in general. So when a particle in the ground state, a photon allowed to incident on that, this particle or atom absorbs the energy. It jumps from the lower energy state to higher energy state. It is called as excitation, and the particle is called as excited particle, and the mechanism is called as induced absorption. By absorbing a photon, a particle can be transferred from lower energy state to higher energy state. So this is called as induced absorption. In the figure you can see that the ground state, initially atom is there, a photon is allowed to incident on that, then this photon is disappearing. In the second level, only the atom is exciting from E1 to E2. So this mechanism, this is called as induced absorption. Then the particle is excited to the higher energy state, but the particle can remain in the excited state for only a limited time, known as lifetime, which is of the order of 10 to the power of minus 8 seconds. So the time period is very, very limited. So by absorbing photon, a particle can jump from lower energy state to higher energy state, but immediately after 10 to the power of minus seconds, which is the lifetime, it comes back. But however, in some atomic processes and mechanisms, the lifetime is greater than 10 to the power of minus 8 seconds. So these states are called as metastable state. The lifetime, that means it goes to a higher energy level, immediately it settles down in an intermediate energy level, which is called as metastable state, where the lifetime is more than 10 to the power of minus 8 seconds. And these states are called as metastable states. It need not be always. In some atomic processes, it is possible. In general, after excitation, after completing its lifetime, again the particle will be moving from higher energy state to lower energy state by emitting energy. But there are certain energy states are available in which the lifetime is more than 10 to the power of minus 8 seconds, and these states are called as metastable states. You take the definition if you want, because sometimes in the exam they may ask a particle or an atom can remain in the excited state at a limited time called as lifetime, which is of the order of 10 to the power of minus 8 seconds. A particle can remain in the excited state for a limited time known as lifetime, which is of the order of 10 to the power of minus 8 seconds. However, there exists certain excited states in which the lifetime is more than 10 power minus 8 seconds, and these states are called as metastable states. These states are called metastable states. So the energy state in which the lifetime is more than 10 to the power of minus 8 seconds is called as metastable. Shall I proceed, students?
Yes, sir.
The second mechanism is spontaneous emission. Take the heading and take the figure. Spontaneous emission. Spontaneous emission. So in the first process, by absorbing a photon, a particle or atom jumps from, excites from, moves from lower energy to higher energy level. And the lifetime is very limited, which is of the order of 24 of minus 8 seconds. So after finishing its lifetime, again the particle will be moving from higher energy state to lower energy state. So the emission of particle from a higher energy state to lower energy state spontaneously by emptying a photon of energy is called as spontaneous emission. Sorry, here one word is missing. Correct this. The movement of particles will be more appropriate. The movement of particles from a higher energy state to lower energy state by emitting a photon of energy. See, if you see the diagram, because of induced absorption, a particle is moving from E1 to E2. After finishing its lifetime, what will happen? The particle will be coming from excited higher energy state to lower energy state. During this process, it emits a photon. Because it initially it absorbs a photon, it gets excited. Again, it after lifetime, it gets de-excited by coming to its original state by emitting a photon. Without any involvement of external factor. That's why it is called as spontaneous emission. So the movement of particles from higher energy state to lower energy states spontaneously by emitting a photon of energy hν is called as spontaneous emission. So as I said, this emission takes place without any external energy. By itself, after finishing its lifetime, the particle will jump from higher energy to lower energy by emitting a photon. So this emission depends only on the type of the particle and type of transition. And external force is not at all influenced, have influence on this mechanism. And the drawback of this spontaneous emission is, so the radiation, what is emitted, it is incoherent and has a broad spectrum. So in spontaneous emission, the emitted photons, they are incoherent. That means they don't have same phase or constant phase difference. And it has a broad spectrum. Because of the different radiations, you have a wide range of wavelengths. So it is not a laser. So this is the second mechanism, which is called as spontaneous emission. So first one is induced absorption, the process of exciting a particle from lower energy to higher energy by absorbing a photon is called as induced absorption. The particle in the ground state absorbs the photon, so it can excite it, and during this process, the amount of energy of photon is absorbed by the particle. The lifetime is very limited, which is of the order of 10 to the power of minus 8 seconds. Then again, it spontaneously by itself, it transfers to the lower state by emitting a photon. So this process, this is called as spontaneous emission. External incitement involvement is zero here, and it depends on the type of the particle and type of transition. But during this process, what photons are emitted, they are incoherent and produces a broad spectrum. A combination of wavelengths will be appearing. It's not a monochromatic light. So this process, this is called as spontaneous emission. Please speak the diagram. Girls, is it clear? Please respond.
Yes, sir.
It is there in your intermediate? Not there. Is it there in your intermediate? Okay. And take the third one, stimulated emission, and take the diagram also. Third one, stimulated emission. Third one is stimulated emission. In the laser definition acronym, in that you have a laser light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. So this mechanism is very important for the production of laser. And you see in the diagram, the particle or atom is in the excited state. First figure. Second figure, it comes to the ground level or zero energy state or minimum energy state. So the third important process is the stimulated emission. So the emission of a particle or atom from higher energy to lower energy by stimulating with another photon having the energy equals to the energy difference between the levels is called as stimulated emission. So this is another mechanism. See here in the diagram, the particle is in the de-excited state, so in the excited state. Now instantaneously, another photon is allowed to interact with the particle which is there in the excited state. So once this interaction happens, then what happens? The particle will be de-exciting and it is reaching its ground level by emitting another photon. So as a result, two photons are released in this process. So this mechanism, this is called as stimulated emission. So the particle which is there in the excited state forcefully comes to the ground state by emitting a photon which is in coherent with the incident photon. This phenomena, this is called as stimulated emission. So in this process, the stimulated emission, it can be controlled from outside because incident photon interacts with the excited atom so that two atoms will be, photons will be emitted. So the emitted photon and the incident photon have same direction, phase, frequency and plane of polarization. So they are coherent. So the light produced during this process is coherent and monochromatic, which achieves the purpose of laser. So which has a high direction, high intensity, highly monochromatic and highly coherent. These four characteristics are achieved by using this stimulated emission. So the difference between spontaneous emission and stimulated emission is, in spontaneous emission by itself, the atom in the excited state transfers to the lower energy state by emitting an incoherent and broad photon having broad spectrum. Whereas in stimulated emission, the particle is there in the high excited state, an instant photon is allowed to interact with the excited atom. So during this process, the atom returns to the ground state by emitting a similar photon. So two photons are released as a result, and these two photons are coherent, and because of this coherency, all the properties of laser can be achieved. High directionality, highly monochromatic, coherent, and intensified light can be produced. This is the lasing action. In this way, a laser can be produced. Here, external factor is involved for the production of laser. Incident photon interacts with the excited atom. Two photons are released. Again, these two photons, they stimulate the emission of two more photons like that. You can produce a laser. That we will discuss later. And this is the third mechanism, stimulated emission. Please take the diagram. Is it clear, boys? Stimulated emission?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. Please take the diagram. If you understood these three, induced absorption, spontaneous emission and stimulated emission, the remaining things will be very easy for you. These three mechanisms. So in brief, again I'll explain. Induced absorption is by absorbing a photon. An atom in the ground state, it moves to the higher energy state. This is called as excitation. For the excitation, involvement of photon is required. By absorbing a photon, it happens. So this mechanism is called as induced absorption. So the lifetime is very minimal, and after its lifetime, it comes down to the ground state by energy emitting a photon. So this process, without any involvement of external force, so this is called as spontaneous emission. So the emitted photons are incoherent and it produces a broad spectrum. And third one is stimulated emission. Here, the atom or particle is already in the excited state. A photon from outside is allowed to interact with the excited atom. During this process, the atom comes down by emitting a similar photon. So the two photons are released, which are coherent and which are monochromatic in nature. That means a single wavelength they can be produced, and more number of photons in one direction is achieved. So having high intensity, high directionality, laser beam can be produced by using this stimulated emission. So if you compare this to just what I said, spontaneous emission and stimulated emission, incoherent in spontaneous, coherent in stimulated. Less intensity, high intensity. Here you have a broad spectrum, so the light produced is polychromatic. In stimulated emission, it is monochromatic. only one photon is released in spontaneous emission. Two photons are released in stimulated emission. This directionality and high directionality. More angular speed during propagation, less angular speed. That means they travel straight in motion. Example, light from sodium mercury vapor lamp. It is ordinary light which is having combination of colors also you can expect. Whereas in stimulated emission, light from a laser source, ruby laser, helium ion, gas laser, semiconducting laser, all they are working on the principle of this stimulated emission. What I have explained in a tabular column, easily you can understand. And well, once I upload this, you can go through this. What points I have explained is the same. You can compare what actually the differences between spontaneous emission and stimulated emission. So the three mechanisms are expressed in the three diagrams. The first one, induced absorption. So the particle is in the ground state, photon is allowed to interact with this, so atom get excited. So it is in the excited state. In spontaneous emission, you see spontaneously the particle is moving from higher energy to lower energy by emitting a photon. This is spontaneous emission. Third mechanism is the particle is there in the excited state, photon is allowed to interact with the excited atom. The atom comes down to the lower energy level, two photons are released. This mechanism, this is called as stimulated emission. These diagrams you should represent. Suppose describe the three mechanisms, absorption, spontaneous emission, and stimulated emission. Then with these diagrams you should explain. Small topic only, I will give introduction for today, and the derivation part I will do in the next class. This is very important in this chapter. Einstein's coefficients. Please note. Einstein coefficients. So as we discussed, there are three mechanisms involved for the production of laser: induced absorption, spontaneous emission, and stimulated emission. And Einstein tried to relate these three mechanisms by their probability transitions, and he has introduced some coefficients which are popularly known as Einstein coefficients. So Einstein tried to link or interrelate the three transmission processes, three processes in terms of their transition rates, probability of induced absorption, spontaneous emission, and stimulated emission. And he defined three coefficients which are called as Einstein coefficients. Further, he has introduced three fundamental postulates. The first one describes the probability of induced absorption. Postulate 1. It's very simple. First, you see the probability of induced absorption transition. The statement is like this: from state 1 to state 2, or E1 to E2, or lower energy to higher energy state, depends on the properties of 1 and 2 and is proportional to the energy density of incident radiation. So the probability P suffix 1 2, that means the transition is taken from 1 to 2, that means lower energy to higher energy, because the particle is in the lower energy state represented by 1, which is lower E1 or lower energy state. By absorbing a photon, it jumps from higher energy state represented by 2. So P12 means transition is taken from lower energy state to higher energy state, 1 to 2, by induced absorption. So the probability of induced absorption from state 1 to state 2, it depends on the properties of 1 and 2. So of course, how the energy levels are there depends, and also it is proportional to the energy density of incident radiation, rho nu. Because what is the energy of the photon? This photon should interact with the atom in the ground state. By absorbing the energy of the photon, the particle should move from lower energy state to higher energy state. So how much, what energy the photon is interacting with, that excitation will take place. So it is proportional to the energy density of the incident radiation. So mathematically you can write P12 is directly proportional to rho of nu. The probability of induced absorption transition is directly proportional to rho nu. Or P12 is equal to, if you remove this proportional, you can introduce B12. B12 is called as Einstein coefficient of absorption transition. So transition is taken from state 1 to state 2 is represented by 1, 2. So P12 is equal to B12 into rho nu, where nu is the frequency. This is postulate 1. So postulate 1, it describes the induced absorption. According to this, the probability of induced absorption transition P12 from state 1 to state 2 depends on the properties of 1 and 2 and is proportional to the energy density of incident photon. Energy density is represented by rho nu, where nu is the frequency. So as per the statement, P12 is directly proportional to rho nu. If you put a proportionality constant, then P12 is equal to B12 into rho nu. This is equation 1. And B12 is called as Einstein coefficient of absorption transition. This is the first postulate. Please note down this. The probability P12 of induced absorption transition from state 1, which is lower energy, to state 2 depends on the properties of 1 and 2 and is proportional to the energy density rho nu of the incident radiation. Energy density rho nu of the incident radiation. That is, mathematically, P12 is proportional to rho nu, or P12 is equal to B12 rho nu, where B12 is called as Einstein coefficient of absorption transition. Equation 1. Please note. Shall I proceed for the second one, second postulate and third postulate? I'll stop there. Shall I proceed, students?
Yes, sir.
Girls?
Yes, sir.
Then you take postulate 2. The postulate 2 describes a spontaneous emission. So the probability of spontaneous emission transition from state 2 to state 1 depends only on the properties of 1 and 2 and is independent of energy density. Because in spontaneous emission, there is no external force. The atom in the excited state by itself, it is moving from higher energy to lower energy. So it is there is no role of this energy density further. That is the postulate. So the probability of spontaneous emission transition from state 2 means higher energy state to lower energy state by spontaneous emission depends only on the properties and is independent of energy density. Or mathematically you can write P21 is equal to A21, where A21 is called as Einstein coefficient of spontaneous emission transition. Please take this statement. The probability of spontaneous emission transition, you should remember state 2 means lower energy or E2, all the three are same. From state 2 to state 1 depends only on the properties of 1 and 2 and is independent of energy density. Or P21 is equal to A21, where A21 is called Einstein coefficient of spontaneous emission transition. Please note on this. Shall I proceed, students? Third postulate is there.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So, then postulate 3. Postulate 3, it describes the probability of stimulated emission transition. So according to this, the probability of stimulated emission transition from state 2 to state 1 depends on the properties of 1 and 2 and is proportional to the energy density rho nu. Because in the stimulated emission, the particle is in the excited state, an external photon is allowed to interact with the excited atom so that it comes down to the lower energy state by emitting 2 photons. So external energy is involved here. So the probability of stimulated emission transition from higher energy to lower energy or state 2 to state 1, again it depends on the properties and also proportional to energy density. Here it is mentioned as P21 because transition is taking from state 2 to state 1. That's why it is defined as P21. In the induced absorption, it is P12. You should note this difference. So according to this, P21 is directly proportional to rho nu, where rho nu is the energy density, nu is the frequency. By removing the proportionality, you can put by putting a proportionality constant, it is P21 is equal to B21 into rho of nu. This B21 is called as Einstein coefficient of stimulated emission transition. So what is the total probability that an atom can be moving from higher energy to lower energy? It is a combination of both, because either by spontaneous emission or by stimulated emission, the particle must transfer from higher energy state to lower energy state. Therefore, it can be written as P21, probability of transition from state 2 to state 1. It is a combination of P21 spontaneous, either by spontaneous emission plus P21 stimulated, or by stimulated emission. Or finally, it can be written as P21 is equal to P21 spontaneous is A21 plus P21 stimulated is B21 into rho nu. So this is equation 4. This is postulate 3, which describes the probability of stimulated emission transition. Is it clear? Please note down. The probability of stimulated emission transition from state 2 to state 1 depends on the properties of 1 and 2, and is proportional to the energy density rho nu. Or P21 is proportional to rho nu, or P21 is equal to B21 into rho nu. This B21 is called as Einstein coefficient of stimulated emission transition. So the total probability is, it is either by spontaneous emission or by stimulated emission. So it's a combination of both. So P21 is equal to spontaneous plus stimulated probable rates, emissions, or P21 is equal to A21 plus B21 rho nu. This is equation 4. And small derivation is there. Tomorrow, next class we'll see, because I will stop here at this juncture. So in the today's session, we have discussed what actually laser and what are the applications of laser. We'll discuss in detail again, but many like medical, fiber optic technology, data transformation, display devices, sensors, there are many applications of these lasers. And in this chapter, we are going to discuss the fundamental aspects of laser, how to produce laser. Before that, you should know the mechanisms. So first, we have discussed the fundamental aspects of mechanisms involved in atomic processes, such as induced absorption, spontaneous emission, stimulated emission, and a metastable state. 4 we have discussed, and also we have discussed the characteristics of lasers. One is high directionality, high monochromaticity, and high intensity, and high
Intensity.
intensity, coherence, monochromaticity, and directionality. All the 4 we have discussed. Then the postulates, Einstein tried to relate these 3 mechanisms by defining 3 coefficients, which are called as Einstein coefficients. Postulate 1 describes the process of induced absorption, how the probability of transmission depends on the energy density. Then second postulate describes the spontaneous emission, and third one describes the stimulated emission transition. He defined the 3 coefficients, B12 and A21 and B21. And finally, we can obtain P21. The probability of emission transition is sum of spontaneous and stimulated, which is given by A21 plus B21 into rho nu. And finally, he obtained the relation between these 3, which are called as Einstein coefficients. Small definition is there by using Boltzmann distribution law and by taking the fundamental aspects. Some derivation is there. In the next class, Tuesday, we'll discuss and I'll complete that. And 1 or 2 lasers also I'll explain. So that on that day, most likely I can complete laser. Within 2 periods, if I complete fiber optics, then finally you go to the unit 3, in which you have electromagnetic theory and wave mechanics. This I have planned actually. So once again, for your, I am reminding you, tomorrow morning there will be a online lecture.